viewers of ThatGuyOverTheGlasses.com, how are you today?
You never see it coming.
Well, I certainly didn't see that coming. Hi, I'm MangaKamen, and welcome to my channel. Drama is something that fuels this website of YouTube, and while I don't normally like to do this sort of thing, I like to be more of a bystander in these sorts of things. And hey, I guess it's always fun to talk about this stuff once in a while, especially if it's something that you actually once cared about. So one of the hottest things that has been going on with the internet is the channel Awesome Stuff. I mean, there's a lot of videos out on it already. You even got like a live stream of someone reading it off. All the complaints that were made in a 69-page document. And people are giving their takes on the situation, and I guess I'll be going to the latter part of this as well. Although before we begin, I think it should be noted that the backroom darkness of Channel Awesome has been talked about before, and you've got creators coming out on multiple occasions about these sorts of things. Hell, I remember there being a 4chan thread talking about the unprofessional nature of the Walker brothers and Mike Machad. Then again, it's 4chan, you take that stuff as a reliable source of information at your own risk. But then we had people like Lordcat who came out years about these sorts of things happening. Then again, a lot of people really disregard him because of how he, well...
How about you act like a professional for once? You're a loser! You're a loser! You got a small dick. You got a small dick.
But I think what really pushed the envelope on these sorts of things coming out would have to be because of Mr. Medeker. Love him, hate him, think he's just a bunch of white noise. Medeker did a whole series of videos on the last quarter of last year. Now, once again, whether you believe some of the rumors he talks about is up to you, but he does bring up a few points that do talk about the site and the creators, some of which came up in the 69-page report concerning the management. Now, while I do wish that these are trustworthy testimonies, since there's a lot of corroboration with a few screenshots peppered here and there, I would like there to be more evidence than just testimony, though. I mean, considering all the stories and information that we've been giving, there's a lot of lined up information about the ideas and rumors that have been heard by creators themselves. Still, as a skeptical person, I can't outright say that this is the entire truth, since there are a lot of accounts that don't have verification, or have links that just lead to people's tweets and not actually proving anything other than they said this thing. I mean, we've got the whole Mike Machad firing someone for not answering a Skype message in 15 minutes, being hypocritical and making promises that were never fulfilled. Honestly, a lot of these issues are attributed to mismanagement and unprofessionalism. These are basically allegations and are not to be set in stone. Still, looking at the document, and if we are to take it as truth, a lot of this is on Machad's part, but the Walker brothers are still at the top of this, and unfortunately, due to the decision that blows my mind and how stupid it is, they gave the rights of the nostalgia critic to Mike Machad, so they can't get rid of Machad, who seems to be the core of a lot of these issues that were brought up against Channel Awesome, especially in this document. Seriously, that has got to be one of the stupidest decisions I have ever seen. And honestly, a lot of the issues that were brought up in the document, not having so many creators to manage, hiring an actual manager with expertise, having a detailed contract with the contributors, having rules that are actually set up, allowing creators to have their own fan fundings, etc., etc. Actually, let's talk about this stuff, especially with the fan funding, because with the Indiegogo, because there was even a threat that the Indiegogo for that guy with the glasses website was actually going to be investigated by the website, and they would probably be banned from Indiegogo if we were using their services. Then again, I found that whole Indiegogo thing was a mess. I mean, come on. $500 for a 30-minute Skype call? Really? Still, there's a lot in this document that is pretty serious, but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that's petty as well. I mean, you've got things like critiquing the nostalgia critic's incompetence of tech and how his audio levels suck, but then you've got Waso levels of direction and competence, which is really ironic considering that Doug Walker has criticized Tommy Wiseau heavily in the past.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
I guess it might have just been a self-reflection thing. I mean, considering the level of professionalism here, it's rather impressive, actually. One of my favorite claims is that Doug didn't tell any of the contributors that the nostalgia critic was ending.
You're kind of an idiot, aren't you?
And we know what happened after that mess.
The city of Townsville is on fire!
A lot of fans left the site and took a ton of the potential viewership for said contributors, since the nostalgia critic was the driving force for that site. And then there's the treatment of Phelan. You know, Thalos. Man, the way they treated him was rough, and you thought that was actually a joke in the movies. I mean, from going behind his back to complain about his effects instead of just telling him, to flip-flopping on a green screen proportion, which actually they never even used afterwards, so it was kind of pointless. Oh, and how the Walker brothers just fought each other over scripts. Look, I'm one of the first people to tell you that, yes, artistic integrity is something that's important in the creative process with these sorts of things. However, when you're doing a production that involves other people, you need to remember just that. They're people. I mean, from the document, there were times where the movie sets, and I use that term lightly, didn't have craft services or even bottled water to provide for the people who were acting. And that's just looking on the production side. Let's talk about the management side. Look, look, Skype is trash, and when you're using that as your main source of communication with your employees, I guess, in all honesty, if you want to use it to communicate with people, that's fine. However, when you're running a business, you shouldn't be using that as your single means of contact between employees. That's right, no email, no Facebook, no social media accounts. You should just imagine how much they'd charge for emails. Oh, and blaming people for putting mid-rolls on videos for the site's loss of traffic. Yeah, I'm sure that's the reason why people aren't viewing. It's not like, oh, I don't know, the Nostalgia Critic just ended, and people were not watching because, well, what's the point? Yeah, mid-rolls are the reason that views are down. So when views are down and creators are needing to, eat, drink, and pay rent, those frivolous things, what's the one thing they turn to? That's right, crowdfunding like Patreon, which according to Rob Walker was a slap in the face to the fans?
Something's not right here.
Yet, he'll be perfectly fine for promoting the site's Indiegogo. That makes about as much sense as Korn learning how to dance.
It's the corn, sir. They appear to be dancing, sir.
Also, side tangent, but I have a Patreon if you guys are interested in supporting me. Shill. I mean, that's nothing wrong with e-begging if you realize that you're doing it, but if you're criticizing and demonizing people for doing it, while at the same time promoting a crowdfunding project, then we kinda have a problem. Oh, let's talk about how they treated some of their actual employees who worked on the site directly. Like the person who worked for HR Holly. I mean, they worked her like a dog. They worked her during vacations, holidays, weekends, even days she had surgery. Like, for Arceus' sakes, what kind of slave drivers were you, Channel Awesome? Oh, and she canceled a pretty important doctor's appointment to go to work, only to be told she was fired. Classy. And then we got the stuff from Linkara. He was given the job of web forum moderator without him being asked if he really wanted. And it's kind of a bad thing to do because he's a content creator and doesn't really have the time to do it. Really shows how they value their content creators. Even Linkara, who was one of the cornerstones of the site and made content on a regular basis. And then there's the just plain idiotic stuff, like not allowing content creators to attend conventions because Doug Walker had a bad time at said conventions. Or how about Mashad getting upset at Skitch, the guy who made the music for the anniversary movies, tried selling the music. Not only did Mashad believe that the music belonged to him, but the music producer didn't get paid fully for making the work in the first place. He's gotta make money somehow. Keeping on the trend with Mashad, he's trying to sell art prints of another artist's work without giving the artist any compensation for it. Or making promises to give a Sega Genesis for a contest, not shipping it out, effectively making the content creator who made the contest look like a scumbag. Oh, and let's not forget about changing the rules for people, like how Linkara got a blip channel, but when Mars Girl did that, Mashad got mad for her not getting permission from him for doing so. However, when she brought up that Linkara suggested to her, he backed off. Are the rules anywhere? And if they are, don't you think it'd be a good idea to have them established and told your employees about them? I mean, they're not Mentalk the Mind Taker. The only way of communication is through Skype. I mean, I guess they do have a company policy, it's just coming soon. And apparently the rules were just randomized and only used to fire someone. I mean, you got Phelan acting surprised when there was a list of rules since they never got said rules or were told anything about them. throwing the fact that the rules weren't enforced equally. I mean, according to the document, there's one person who was on the site who didn't post for months, but because the management didn't want to drop the person, they ignored the minimum video per month requirement. And considering that Chaos D1 was one day late with a video due to his wife's medical issues, he was fired, despite providing 4 videos in the previous month and never missing a scheduled post in over 5 years. And that's not talking about how Mike Machado would bully people in private and not even telling employees that were fired.
It just raises too many questions.
But then we get to the stuff about Gonzo, or Nerd to the Third Power. And I mean, wow, if this is true, then it really shows Mike Machado is not even a person, but... According to the document, Mike Machado had ostracized Gonzo from the other contributors and community at large, mainly because Machado had told people Gonzo was trouble. I want to stress that even if the document itself says that this was a rumor, so we can't confirm that this is true or not, but for the time being, in this video, let's continue down this rabbit hole, shall we? Then there's the stuff that says that Machado was Gonzo's only contact, and when viewership counter on his recorded podcast were removed, for some reason, he was left to ask Machado about the numbers. After all, if you can tell what your viewers like by the view count, you can gauge what content your viewers like and potentially get those numbers up by doing more of said content. These requests were met with this. At least until Machado, and I quote from the paper, said,
"Stop asking for your numbers. They suck anyway because nobody comes to listen to you."
Oh, here it goes.
And to add to that, you got Machado randomly messaging Gonzo saying,
"Your numbers are low. Get them up or you'll be booted from the site.
Were you knocked on the head or something?
How is he supposed to know what his numbers are and how to improve if you won't tell him his numbers or let him see his numbers? But if you want to see the highest level of insanity and the downright scummiest of behaviors, it has to involve Juario. If you guys didn't know, Justin Carmichael, aka Juario, was a content creator of the site who had sadly taken his own life a few years ago. He was a really good content creator and he made really good videos. He was one of the reasons why I got more into tokusatsu, and reading this part really made me mad. So, get this. Gonzo wanted to do a tribute or an online wake for Juario, and came to Mashad with the idea. Mashad's response?
Nobody knows who you are. They won't care about anything you're going to put together. We're going to have Doug or Lewis or someone put something together. Someone people actually come here to see.
What the hell was that?
Honestly, there is a lot more in the document than I'm talking about, and I do suggest you guys read it. There is an abridged version out there too. I do want to stress as well that unless more information and evidence comes up to back up these claims, you should treat them as allegations for the most part. Still, the damage has been done. Channel Awesome has been losing subs ever since the debacle has been happening, and while in the long run that probably won't mean anything, it's still a form of backlash that needs to be noted. And one more thing I need to point out is the apology that Channel Awesome gave on Twitter. Or, I would say it's more of a non-apology because we got this line.
For the people who have spoken out about past instances they deemed hurtful or unprofessional, we sincerely regret you felt that way.
Excuse me?
We hope you've enjoyed No Moral Theater.
Now look, like I said, come at this with a skeptical mind. I mean, we've got anonymous stories talking about harassment in this document. For all we know, it could be true, it could be false, who knows? We don't even know who the person is, or who they're even referring to. If more evidence and information does come out to support all these claims, then fine. I'm more than happy to believe it's true, but until then, you guys still need to be skeptical in instances like this, especially if there isn't any corroboration or evidence to support it. I mean, if this stuff is true, then it's a guide on what not to do, and I recommend you guys read it if you're interested in getting into a profession like this. Now, I haven't been the biggest fan of Channel Awesome, but to see a site and people who had a hand in the version of modern reviewing is rather heartbreaking. So for those who are getting into video making, movie production, or looking to start a business, I do suggest you read this. Not to scorn, not to laugh, but to learn from the mistakes made by all these people. My name is Kamen, and remember to examine your fandom.